Nailed it.
I'm not. Does this work?
Nailed
Hello?
it.
Hello?
Hello?
Check, you guys hear me,
1, 2.
no?
No, maybe.
Oh, it
Hello?
does work. Weird.
Does mine work?
Check, yeah.
Yeah,
Mine
check.
works.
Check.
Mic check.
Microphone
Check,
check.
check.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you'll just take it. Mean.
No, I don't think this one works.
It works.
Are we good to go? Mic's good? No?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Okay. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabe and the Huron-Wendat. The ancestral land on which we stand upon today is still home to many indigenous people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to be here. And, yes. Oh, yes. All right, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to get everyone to go down the line and introduce themselves. And then I want them to give us a little info on any character that they felt represented by growing up, watching television, movies, books, whatever. So I will start with myself. I am Diana Benitez. I'm your moderator. I don't really have a lot of characters that I grew up feeling represented by, but I do now, and that is Elena Alvarez from One Day at a Time, and also Rosita from Wynonna Earp. So this is very exciting for me. So, yes, your turn.
Hi. My name is Shamier Anderson. You guys have been so lovely today. I haven't been on a panel for God knows how long, so it feels good to be back, so thank you for having me. A character or a TV show that, honestly, there wasn't many black guys on TV, but I liked Free Willy. I love Free Willy. Don't know why, I always love Free Willy. And Hillary Duff. I love Hillary Duff. But that's it, you know? I love Lizzie McGuire. Is my shit. I love my white girl. No, I'm joking. Just being real.
Okay. We're keeping it real here, guys.
100% thorough.
I'm Tamara Duarte. And I think I played with a lot of Barbies growing up. And me and my sisters. And I always liked the Hawaiian Barbie. I mean, that was the only Barbie that, really, the Hawaiian Barbie was the one I would play with the most. I don't know. That's all I got. I got no Free Willy, sorry. Or Hillary Duff.
Free Willy.
I know, right?
And the movie was lit, fam. What do you mean?
I'm Varun. Hello.
Varuni. Varun. Not, last name. It's like
Just
Madonna.
Varun. Just Varun.
I mean, I spoke of this before, but I'll say it again. I definitely did not have anybody really represent me in a positive way as like an Indian male on television. I mean, Apu or the guy or the guy from Short Circuit 2 who was white, painted in brown face. Like very, very few people. Nobody. Yeah, it was crazy. It was hard. It was hard with that. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. It's like no, that's.
It's unfortunate. I mean,
Yeah.
you never. It's weird as a kid. Like you immediately identify. Like when you start to realize that you're different than everybody else. Like that's when it starts to get upsetting. Like at 4 and 5, you're like, oh, this is normal. And then like at 10, you're like, wait, I'm not here. I'm not represented on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name's Chantal Riley. What it do? What's up? And I would say pretty much every Black Renaissance show in the 90s. So The Cosby Show, you had Sister Sister.
I love Sister Sister.
Yeah, Fresh Prince.
The famous Jet Jackson.
Jet, there you
that
go.
was it.
There you
There
go.
it is. R.I.P.
Disney Channel, come
that
on.
was a good
Okay,
one.
you're
There
bringing
it
them all.
is.
A different
them all.
world.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that in the 90s we did have a time where Black excellence was on television. Martin. So yeah, I'm grateful for that. And then, then there was like nothing after that. Actually, guys, good watch. If you go on Netflix and you watch, there's this special that CNN does called The 90s. Has anybody seen it? They've done one for like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. If you watch that, it'll explain everything about that whole Black Renaissance in television and why it exploded as it did, but also why it depleted right after that. Very terrible, very heartbreaking, but very interesting to watch. So watch that. Very, very good.
Yeah, great idea.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to start off with a few questions that were written by someone on our committee, and then I'm going to give you guys some of the fan questions because there was quite a few of them. So we're going to start with a hopefully interesting one. For anyone who has worked in American and Canadian industry, do you notice any difference in the way that POC characters are treated or portrayed, or in terms of getting a job as a person of color? Do you
Yes.
notice any difference?
Absolutely. Do you need me to?
You can elaborate. Yeah.
Yes.
You can
Next
elaborate.
question. I feel like in the States, there's definitely a huge push now with inclusion. And I feel like in the States, there's more courage just to people speaking out about it. Whereas here in Canada, we're a little more timid about it. And we're kind of afraid to talk up about it. And I've seen, on certain shows where a particular person that a director wanted to cast was not cast simply because of the color of their skin. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. And they chose the white person over the black person just because of that reason. And so I feel like, that happening here, it's an outrage and we want to talk up. And I'm like, how can I, bring this to light? Who do I talk to? Whatever. But everyone is kind of like, let's just, simmer down. Let's, handle this on the underground. Whereas in the States, it's like, yeah, we're going to call them out. We're going to tweet about it. You know what I mean? We're going to put it on the news and all other stuff. So I feel like, yeah, there's definitely a difference between how the POCs are treated in television between borders.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyone else want to chime in?
It's hard. I think we all have a bunch of stories. We're like, what can we say? This is such a Canadian way of doing it too. It's like, what can we say? What can we say? What's proper? What's proper?
They need to work on it.
Yeah, they definitely
yeah,
need
of
to work
course.
on it. Like I had a situation where I had to change the color of my hair because I was playing against an Indian woman, and they thought we looked alike.
Oh my God.
And I'm like so confused by it. I'm like, so I have to go lighter with my hair because you think I look like an Indian woman.
Oh my God.
Okay. Like it's baffling to me. And okay, I'll change the color of my hair. Like as an artist, it's so hard. And you're a working actor and where you can't really, like, what do you say? No to the job?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you say? What do you say to that?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm not going to change it because I don't look like her. It's like,
Right.
well, that's what the executive producers think. And there's not much I could say about that except saying it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that stems from whoever's at the top, right? Executive
Yeah.
producers and owners of networks, especially out here in Canada. I mean, the biggest ones we have is like CBC, CTV, what else? Global, right? So it's like, if we take a look at who's on the, who has a seat at the table there, and if it's obviously predominantly white, then chances are that's going to trickle down into your network's television shows, whereas you're going to have mostly white characters on TV, and that's what I'm seeing here in Canada, whereas we don't have a show where it's just an all-black cast. We don't have a show where it's an all-Indian cast or all-Latino cast. And so I feel like, they're trying, to put a little black person here, little Indian guy here, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you got to meet, it feels like they're trying to meet like a quota. You know what I mean?
As opposed to just embracing it.
As opposed to like, boom, here's a show.
She's right for the role.
And
It
this
doesn't
is
matter
like,
what color
we have
her skin
Kim's
is.
Convenience, which is great. We have an all Asian, lead cast, and that's amazing. But what else?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? there's not much. And so I feel like Canada definitely needs to do more in that and not be afraid to take chances on the demographic, because if you look at Toronto alone, we are multicultural. Look at this room itself, you know what I mean? So many different cultures in itself. So it's like, why not just have that representation? I know we had a show, The Kinky My Hair, right? We had it, yeah. All black cast, Caribbean, but it didn't last as long, unfortunately. But I feel like if we just take some more chances and give people what they want to see, which is themselves on screen, then it can be as successful as what's going on in the States.
Absolutely. So actually, speaking of, off of what Tamara said about dyeing your hair, someone asked a question, is there any role or audition that you had to walk away from, like you felt you had to walk away from because they were asking you to play a stereotype?
Yeah, I mean, auditioning, typically I'll turn down stereotypes. I mean, I don't have the same kind of also relationship to American projects as you guys, but the stuff I go for is still just as myopic or stereotypical as other things in Canada. Like, I don't really see the bridge divided in the Asian kind of category. Like, men are often emasculated from the get-go in both sides of the border. Like, so, yeah, there's a lot of things I turn down because they're just simply like the writer has no cultural idea what he's saying, but it's just funny to be the butt of a joke. And it's consistent. I mean, it's maybe less so now, but it's still like you look at like Big Bang Theory. That's like the biggest representation of an Indian man, and you're like, well, that's not indicative of everybody in terms of like mainstream, But yeah, I don't know.
Anyone else want to share an experience?
Have you turned down anything?
Oh yeah, so I turned down this role that was like a super stereotypical like pizza man assistant. But funny enough, like my brother had to take the role,
Wow.
and it was just because my brother needed to work, and it's just like he's like, Varun, are you gonna do this? I'm like, no, I can't. Like I can't do this. Like I'm not in the position. He's like, I kind of have to. I have to try and do this so I can make money to support myself, and that's like a heartbreaking decision because he has to decide whether to put food on his plate or like in some capacity sell himself. So yeah, I don't know. I've experienced that, and I don't really wish it on anybody. It's not fun to do that stuff.
I've sold out.
Yeah.
Yeah, play the crazy Latina on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like walking into a bar and catching your boyfriend cheating on you and I've sold out. I was like, okay, well, I gotta work. I gotta bring money in, and I'm gonna do it.
It comes to just that check, when you're down your luck sometimes, and this industry is not easy. You could be working today and then have nothing tomorrow. And so you feel like, you got to just take what you can get sometimes.
You're all answering my questions before I even ask them. It's great. I love it. It's so good. So someone asked a question, or I'll actually say their name. Purgatory Feminist asked a question, what working conditions are important to you to feel comfortable as a person of color in your job?
Should I just be like so honest? Go ahead, Shamier.
Working conditions. For me, to be honest, I'm tired of seeing men on set. I want to see more women in power. I think women directors, women of color directors, producers, writers. I actually feel really uncomfortable when the entire crew is a bunch of white guys.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
That's actually a working condition for me where like it actually, and it's not a matter of me hating or wanting to segregate or isolate. It's more so just having people be well-rounded and opportunity, because sometimes it helps when you can see somebody that looks like you on set, and have those conversations that, when you're off camera. I think Wynonna Earp, to be honest, is, one of the, back to your thing about representation. I mean, Xavier Dawes was black, and we never ever said, oh, he's the black guy. I think our show is a perfect example of that. But conditions for me is just being well-rounded, well-represented. And I'm very fortunate enough to be, building myself in this industry and having an imprint where I get kind of petty in those areas where I'm like, I'm not working if you don't have X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
you know. And it's and I just don't even read scripts or take parts. And I try to do meetings first, just so I can know who I'm working with and how educated they are about people. Because at the end of the day, we're just people, you know, fulfilling a job and a service. So, you know, it's kind of how I work. And the more, you know, clout we get and the more power we're able to bring, is the more I'll be able to change within. And this is why, you know, I come back home and do what I do at home to try to make that impact. And I think Chantel's a great example with Frankie Drake. You know, she's the lead of a CBC series.
Thank you.
You know, I think that's important. You know, that CBC is able to do something like that. It's important that Sci-Fi and the Canadian distributor is able to do it with myself and the rest of this cast. But I think we do have a lot of work to do. And I think that's a condition within itself. And to me, that's the number one condition outside of like a safety and that type of stuff, and the witness and all that. But I think that is, you know, a very important condition for me.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's just having people on set that look like you and that camaraderie, because it is predominantly white.
Especially in the hair department.
Yeah, that part. We could talk about that again.
Oh, Chantal.
Yeah, I mean, I love who I work with and they're all great, but it'd be nice to have people that understand my skin and understand my hair and understand what it takes in order to walk in this skin. You know what I mean? And so everyone is talented that we work with, but it would be great to have, like Sham said, just to have more people of color.
And for those of you who are not clear, when we say hair department, meaning there's people on set that have to groom people, you know, of color, and my hair doesn't look like your hair, you know, or Tim's hair. And I'm not saying anything against our Wynonna Earp cast and crew, they're incredible, but, you know, not everybody knows what a ball fade is versus, you know, whatever else is going on. So I think it's important that people are educated and, you know, it's just another thing. So just to be clear what we meant by that.
Yeah.
I think a big thing too is what gives me comfort is what does the writer's room look like?
Yes.
Like it all starts with the writing always in every aspect of our industry. And so if you have a diverse writer's room, that just says so much. It just all starts there.
I feel like you could always tell when you watch a show what their writer's room looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're recording this, aren't we? I was going to call out some shows, but you know what? Let me just hold my tongue. Let me pause. Ain't trying to lose, you know what I'm saying?
It was nice. Did you see that, like the Lord of the Rings series on Amazon? They just showed all the creatives in it, and they just have such an eclectic mix of different races and genders and everything. It was like amazing to see that, and that was the thing they were advertising. Like, oh, we know Lord of the Rings is usually pretty white, but we're gonna change this and like make it a different experience for you, and that's super exciting to me. Like people are taking note and starting there.
Frodo will be black.
Okay. Just like on an off note, like about what Shamier was saying, I think it's great. Like as a person of color, you have to speak up for yourself when you can, because the only way to make a difference is to try. And you know, sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's not safe, which is understandable. But I think it's great, Shamier, that you have that like checklist of like what you need to be comfortable acting and being on a project. Yeah, I think that's
Not
great.
everybody has that ability, though, and that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes time, and, you know, I've had to do all the gangbanger roles, the robber roles. I had to do all the stereotypes that, you know, fit a black man, but it's one of those things where you got to get yourself in the system, but then it's your responsibility once you get to the top, or as your way to the top, you know, you got to make those changes, and this is why I'm starting things like my production company, and, you know, becoming a producer, and, you know, flying into Toronto and sitting down with everybody here to talk about it, you know, so, but yeah, it takes time, and you gotta just keep working. But I think us as artists up here, we have a responsibility, and so do y'all, you know, to educate people. But when you're in that position, you know, it's what do you do with the power? You know, with great power comes great responsibility. Uncle Ben.
It's a great Batman quote.
I know. It's not X-Men? I thought it was X-Men.
That's the Batman quote.
Spider-Man. What's Spider-Man?
That actually leads into another question that someone had. Heather on Twitter asked, do you feel like you bear a responsibility as an actor to choose roles that align with your moral beliefs or anything? And if when you are fortunate enough to have the freedom to do so?
I think it's so important to align yourself with projects that you can grow spiritually from, that you can that align with your moral beliefs, because when you go against that, it definitely shows in your work. For me, I don't know about everyone else, but when I do something that is just like not right, it just doesn't turn out the way, like I'm not as creatively free, and I don't do the best work that I can possibly do. So I definitely think, I mean, if you have the luxury of doing that and being able to align yourself, like I've said no to auditions where I'm like, this is the typical lesbian role, I'm not doing it. And the fact that there's so much nudity involved, it's just not necessary. Like I just say I don't feel comfortable. But they're like, oh, this project, that's the way it is, and like we can negotiate that after, and everyone's like talking you into it, and I'm like, my gut says no, sorry. And it's like, it's really hard at times to do that, because sometimes you're in between projects, and sometimes you're like, but I think it's like what comes first, right? It's like, do you manifest it and just say no at the beginning, and then other things that align with you come, or do you get to the top and then you say no? And I think it's the opposite. I think you do the hard work now and you say no, or else you're going to be stuck in a place where you're going to regret projects that you did in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we're all trying to live an ethical life and moral life according to our own compass.
Yeah.
And it takes a part of your soul out of you to sell yourself out, to be a participant of something that you know will hurt someone and make them feel shameful about themselves, or just as something negative in the world. As an actor, you often feel kind of like a tool, because you're a tool for the art, for the script, you're a vehicle for the story, and that's all you are. But also at the same time, you're driving as well. You get to choose how you want to portray this character. So I don't know. It's such a fine line. It's super tough. But I think you're exactly right. If you're not living every day according to your morals,
authentically,
to yourself, and I think it is. I truly believe you have to do it on the way.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. You have to make these
But
decisions.
That's so
daily.
hard.
I know.
It's so
super
hard. You know. You're like, oh my God, I gotta work.
Yeah.
Right. So at the beginning, but now it gets to a point where you're like, it doesn't change who I am. I'm not gonna live or die if I do this. So you start to evaluate your system, and then you get to a point where you're like, no, I'm doing this now. I'm like, and you have to trust, like Steve Jobs says, like you got to trust that the dots are gonna connect later on. You can't connect the dots now. So just like live authentically within yourself, and things will play out how they're supposed to play out.
Good. Thank you. So going off on how you said it's getting a little easier, do you think, how do you think it's changed? Do you notice a difference from acting roles? Because I know a lot of you have been acting for a while. I've watched a lot of you growing up. But do you feel a difference in the audition process and in how you're treated from when you first started acting to now?
No. Still all white casting directors.
Yeah.
Still don't understand story making. I don't understand how a white casting director can tell me how to authentically live and be in my circumstances, and how to be a black man. That's a big part of it. I mean, Canada's so bad, to be honest. I mean, I just got announced to be a TIFF Rising Star. It's frustrating, in the sense where in the class photo, it was only myself and Cameron Bailey, the artistic director, was the only two black people in the class photo. There's not one black film that was announced, so I took it personal because I'm like, shit, I gotta work a little harder. It's kind of a shame, you know what I mean? So that's why I left Canada, to be honest. It's just very
a lot of them do.
I had to leave this industry out here.
That's what a lot of us do. Sorry.
A lot of actors, I'm speaking to myself, and you have a small circle of friends who have the same narrative as me, and we had to leave because this country, as great as it is, but when it comes to representation, it's just not there, especially for major networks, you know, like the CBC, CTVs. There's only a handful of them. It's hard. It sucks. And so for me, it's about just understanding the hierarchy of like power and how that works, right? Because at the end of the day, you can be a thespian and want to act and be great, but if you don't have a seat at the table, nothing's going to change. So how do I use my resources and not going through the bureaucracy of acting and how this works, and essentially breaking the system and going against it to come in and then reconstruct it. You know, it's like kind of learning to unlearn to then relearn again. So like, I mean, I think it's changing in the now, like as we speak-ish, but I think there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You know, and like I've come back and like it's the same folks. I actually was thinking like, who's the black casting director in Canada? It's like nobody.
Yeah.
If you're out there, please call me because I haven't met you yet.
I've never,
You know, so it's because that's the gatekeeper. Casting for those who don't know, they cast all the projects that you see us in. You know, and they're essentially the gatekeepers to the worlds that we watch on television and movies, and they say the yeas and the nays and all that stuff. And so, I mean, yeah, it's kind of, I know it sounds cold, but it's just kind of the reality, you know. So America's a bit more progressive in that sense, and you know, there's 3 women I've met that are black, but that's it. Vicky Thomas, Kim Coleman, and Kim Harden. Maybe forgetting one more, but that's it. But I mean, and they cast all the black projects, you know. So my long-winded answer is no.
Well, it was a good answer. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on that, or?
Yeah, just agreeing with Sham. Like that's why a lot of us leave, and not just people of color, but even white actors I know. You know, they work out here, and then nothing really pops off until you make it in the States. And then when you make it in the States, oh yeah, Canada loves you now, you know, which is a whole other frustrating thing about here. But yeah, I think it is definitely more progressive across the border, and Canada has a lot of work to do.
Tons.
A lot of work. And it's just, you know, unfortunately here, you know, there's no star system. And not to say we're doing this to get like recognition and all other stuff, but sometimes it's great to be appreciated for the amount of work that you do. And so, you know, just going back to the whole, when you make it in America, that's when Canada now embraces you. And it is unfortunate. And, you know, you see some of these media outlets, I won't call any names, but if you look on their Instagram pages, 95% of their content is of American artists and talent. And these are Canadian media outlets. And so there's that whole frustrating side too about not being able to celebrate their own.
We're changing that.
Yes.
Changing that.
September.
Yes.
Yeah, and being appreciated for your work. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to have a monetary value, but when you've been doing what you do for 15 years and then they're coming in with like minimum wage for an actor and you're like, but I've been doing this for 15 years. So it's like, that doesn't happen in the States as that's all it is here.
Yeah.
So there, they don't do that to you. It's a different.
And you know,
They have a lot of work.
that's why I appreciate what Sham and Steph are doing with Blackball, and every year taking the time out to celebrate. There are artists out here in Canada, and not just people of color, but you know, everyone, and just taking that time to really show the love. Every time I go, I feel so much love, and I've known you guys for you know, quite some time now, and it's like the same love over and over again. And I just love running into you guys and just love what you guys are doing for the city and for us as people, you know what I mean? So we appreciate that. We see it and we love it, and we say keep going because we need it. We need it.
So we're going to get into just a few more Wynonna-specific questions. So first off, do you remember any specific experience where you wished that Wynonna Earp had done something differently in your character's portrayal?
you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Do you remember a specific experience where you wished there was something that Wynonna Earp did differently when you were portraying your character?
Winner of the character or winner of the show?
The show.
The show.
The
Oh,
show,
okay,
yeah.
okay. I wish I didn't die. No, I'm just joking. I just joking. That's the obvious.
You know what's unique about Wynonna, and maybe even ties into the other question. Like, I never, casting wise, I've always felt it was quite consistent for me. Like, it's never really changed in terms of like I think I go for less or more or worse parts or better parts. It always seems the same. But after Wynonna, it was actually the first time I realized that representation matters. So it's like it was my first experience with like being an LGBT character on screen with a person of color. Like all these things were like being represented at once. It was crazy. Like it was. So I never really took in like that Wynonna was taking away from that. I just in fact think Wynonna's breaking new ground with like every single character and with every single relationship. Like I don't even see it. It doesn't fit the mold. Do you know? Like it's so vastly different than anything I've seen in terms
And
of
even
representation.
behind the scenes, like there's so many women working on set.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, yeah.
Need more
So
people
I
of
love
color, but other than that, there's not many people of color. I'm not sure because of demographic in Calgary, but it was very hard having black stunt doubles, black stand-ins. I mean, shout out to my stand-in, you know, but it was just, that was the one part. But I don't know, maybe it was a, you know, I didn't really, maybe it was a Calgary thing. I don't know, you know, but that was something that always lacked for me. And even that I'm off the show, I'm not sure if it's changed, but I didn't really find anybody behind the camera that looked like me. That was the main thing that I kind of noticed. But what I will say to that is when I did read for the role, I turned it down the first time. I don't know if you guys know this, but I did say no. And then I think Lisa Pearson called again and said, no, you should definitely read. Because I said, they're going to cast a white guy. Like, there's no way they're going to have a love interest, like number 2 on a hit show on Sci-Fi cast a dark-skinned brother like me. So I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time. So I put a tape together. It was like one tape. And then Emily met me. I was like, yeah, she's not going to hire me. And I saw Tim at the audition, the screen test. I'm like, that's the white guy they're going to hire. You know what I mean? I was like, yo, that's going to be the white boy.
Oh, there he is right there.
too.
Hey,
Yeah,
Tim.
I saw him at the
Tim,
test.
Tim's
Hey,
like, yeah, and they didn't. They hired me, a black guy, which was really progressive and really cool. And kudos to Emily and the team at Sci-Fi and all the executives, IDW, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, so that was major. So
But that's what I mean. Like it's insane. Our races, like you and I, are never mentioned in the whole
Never,
series.
ever.
Like that's incredible.
It's just
Like,
like
it's never even a
humans.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Amazing.
Like it's so different than anything I've ever experienced. Like our race has nothing to do with our
nothing to do
characters.
with their characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So going into some more fun questions.
These aren't fun questions. What you mean?
I mean,
too
like,
deep?
People are like, oh my gosh, this is so depressing.
So
yeah,
heavy, bro.
yeah. I mean,
It's
it's
like that.
a,
When I say Wynonna, you say Earp. Wynonna! Wynonna! Let's scream! We're back. There you go. Let's do it.
we had fun. Now back to business.
Well, we a couple.
Back to the serious topics.
I mean, it's a very tough topic to talk about sometimes, and I know, like, this is my second time doing this, but I'm still like nervous just saying anything. Like, you know, I see a lot of like white faces looking at me, which is nice because that means that you want to listen.
Yes.
And you want to listen to not just me, but everyone here who has, you know, experiences to share and things to.
Sorry, I got distracted. I thought you was gonna.
She's thirsty. You thirsty?
And I appreciate, and I'm sure we all
Awesome
appreciate
boy.
seeing the non-POCs today. Thank you guys so much for coming and just
Yeah.
Yes.
hearing our voices and hearing what we're going through and what we're experiencing, and also learning and how you guys can make some kind of change in any kind of way
We're
in
fun
your
too.
industries.
We promise.
We're the best.
We're in the back.
Yeah. So,
Fun questions.
one of the questions, oh, sorry, I lost it. This one is actually specifically for Tamara. Danielle. Danielle on Twitter wanted to ask, in the show, they say the more times a revenant is killed, the more like demonic they get.
Wait,
but
my God.
Rosita,
But I'm not dead.
Yes.
Wait.
But Rosita.
Whoa, wait, I don't know.
What? So what are you saying? Like season 4?
Season 4 already?
But since Rosita is one of the least, I guess, demonic revenants on the show currently,
Apparently.
and she has so many degrees and she's done all this schooling and stuff. How often do you think she's been put down by an Earp?
How often? Oh.
Yeah. Do you think she's ever been put down by an Earp?
Rejection. Has she ever been put down by an Earp?
Like killed?
Yeah. Well, obviously she has because she was in
The
the wrong
first
place
one,
at the
yes,
wrong
yeah.
time. But I don't think since then. I don't think she has.
Just kept a low profile.
Just kept a low profile and studied.
Nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good life as a revenant. You live forever. You could study, do a couple degrees.
Live
I mean,
in
you
different
can't really
parts of the
travel.
world.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
you can't.
Oh, no, you
Yeah,
can't.
you can't travel.
You just study a lot.
Yeah.
You can.
Well, that
you can
sounds
go
like
on-
my dream. I would love like 3 degrees.
right?
Come on.
Only if you had enough time.
Yeah.
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 You don't have to eat. I don't know. A lot of good things.
You waste a lot
Exercise.
of time eating.
Awesome. Okay. Another fun question for Chantal from Samantha on Twitter.
Hey.
Is there anything that you would want to do in the world that you would give up your talent to sing for?
Oh, hell no.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, no, I'm not letting that go. That's a God-given, gift, and I'm so grateful for it. And I grew up in church and was able to sing in church and stuff, and was able to see the effects of my singing, and I love how I feel when I do it, and I love how people respond and how they feel, during worship especially, and just bringing the anointing and stuff. And so I would never want to give that up for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
One more Wynonna specific question. If you had an opportunity to write a storyline about your character that highlights your character's culture or background, what's something that you would want to explore?
Dolls' parents.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Can you imagine? If Dolls had kids, maybe. I always had this backstory in my head that he had kids. And that he was chasing for them, and the whole mission is to get his kids back. It's my whole elaborate backstory. Maybe see Dolls' mom. My mom's here today, guys. My mom's right there. And my Auntie Paulette, my Auntie P. This is my mom's first ever convention, con, or whatever it's called. It's her first time here, my Auntie P. So it'd be cool. Maybe I can cast my mom in it because I know she likes to act. Ish. And Auntie P, you can play Auntie P. But yeah, that'd be cool.
Maybe similar to you. Like, yeah, something with Jeremy's mom. I mean, like, you guys know the backstory is pretty tragic, but I don't know. I want to see some aspect of like his relationship with his mom and like what that actually meant to him and how it's shaped him culturally and as the person he is today. I mean, it gave him psychic groin powers for like I want to know why.
What gave you that power?
Honest to God, Emily. Well, be it that Kate is like 1,000,000 years old, it'd be really cool to see what her life was like back in like the whatever century she was born in, because she's a vampire, so she's like so old, so she's gone through so many experiences. So I feel like Kate came from like Africa, and just like kind of found her way into the Europeans, and then I feel like she came from royalty, and well, she did. She kind of they mentioned that her parents, her family weren't just in the slum somewhere. Like they were actual, royalty types, and so I think it'd be really cool to visit that and see what that would have been like.
Yeah, similarly, right? Similarly? No. Where Rosita has lived a long time. I'm fading, guys. I need another Tim Tam.
Sham don't like it though. You put that right back. Nah, see. Oh no!
You don't like my Tim Tams?
I love your
You don't
Tim
like Tam Tams?
No, I do like your Tam Tams. Sorry, carry on. I'm upstaging you. I apologize.
It's okay. It's fine. So, no. That was close. Yeah, where she's lived a long life. So I would love to see where she came from and her parents and her upbringing and, what part of the world she was in, what part of the world she grew up in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Where that would be really cool to know.
Like a little cool short film of like every life she's lived as a revenant.
Yeah.
Like a little highlight of that.
All
Okay.
these-
You better write it.
Okay. Okay, Varun Andres.
Right.
Varun Emily.
Emily?
It's Emily Varun mixed. Varun Emily Andres. It's a ting. It's a ting.
Is that our
It's a ting.
ship? Okay, sure.
It's a ting. Next thing. We got 5 minutes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask one last question. What can
Questions for me? I'm just joking. I'm joking with
this
you.
guy.
I'll play it. Not really,
no
though.
questions for Jeremy?
No, I'm just
either.
joking. I'm joking.
I'm sorry. So what can this question says what can white actors and actresses, but I mean in general, what can what can white people do to help?
Say it.
I'm
Just
sorry.
say it, girl.
There's
Don't
no
be
other way to
scared.
say
Don't be
that.
It's okay.
What can they do to be, good allies? Like how do you,
It's fair.
what do you find supportive?
Literally,
We should ask our white actors.
what you're doing right now
Yeah.
is
Yeah, it's perfect.
the thing to do. Discuss it, talk
Yeah.
about it, be open that, maybe you might be the problem. And it's like, it's good to like share that. And not like you specifically, but like,
Yes.
no, like how we're
That's why you're
contributing to
really
the problem.
Everyone's gone. Everyone's gone. Like,
Just like how we
Unfollow
all are
now.
contributing to the problem,
Yeah.
Like
Y'all.
how we all
For
are
sure.
participating in like bad representation and
Yeah.
what we're doing on a daily basis to help correct that. Just be like aware of it. And I think you guys are doing it by sitting in here and listening to us. So thank you.
Use your
Yes.
white
Yeah.
privilege in the right ways.
Yes. See something, say something. I feel like, if you, have seen or experienced some, people of
The David
color being
Jamaican.
treated, mistreated, to talk up and to defend them. You know what I mean? It's always good to have some white allies, honestly, especially because, like he says, you have your white privilege, so you guys have a lot of power. And
And for those of you who don't know what that is, you need to, because some people don't believe they have white privilege.
Yes,
That's a
that
whole
is
other
true.
conversation.
Yes.
So that's something you need to look into as well. Because if you don't feel like you have a privilege, that's a whole other conversation. So, because some people don't think about that. But sorry to cut you off.
No, that's right.
Yeah? All
Yeah.
right. Well, is there, I guess we have about 3 minutes left. Is there anything else that you guys want to say? Any encouraging words about, or for anyone maybe coming up and acting, any that might face some of the same problems that you have faced in your work?
I've spoken on this like before, and I don't want to seem like a broken record, but like for the longest time, I didn't even know I wasn't being represented, and I was ashamed of it, and I was holding on to that shame for so long until something finally clicked when I went to India and I saw that I was like everybody else, and that I had like tried to shape myself to be more white or to try and fit into whatever the mold was. And if that's you, I want you to know that like representation's coming and we're fighting for it
Yes.
like every day. So thank you. Yeah.
And don't work out at Equinox. Is it Equinox?
Equinox and Soul Cycle.
Yeah.
Whole thing.
Yikes.
The Earper fans are the best. Dolls is back, baby!
Well, thank you. Thank you, all of you, for coming and doing this, and everyone who came to listen and sent in questions. They kind of answered all of them, so I didn't feel like I need to step in and ask the questions because it was all there anyways. But yeah, thank you. This is really important to a lot of people. So
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.